Meditation and spiritual life continued. The spiritual quest. Strive for the highest. We all have an opportunity to follow saner and better ways, but we cling to our particular toys and do not let go our hold. So we have to suffer, and we suffer until we learn the great lesson life teaches us again and again in innumerable ways and come to act wisely. Just as people try to achieve their worldly ambitions and ideals, we should strive for spiritual life and illumination. But this most people don't want to do. It depends solely on our choice, whether we take up the worldly life or the spiritual life, whether we lead a life of slavery and fear or that of freedom and fearlessness. We must strive to achieve something that is higher, that is not subject to change and decay. We very often choose the path of avidya, ignorance, willfully and deliberately because we cling to our phantoms of physical and emotional enjoyment, which, after all, we shall have to give up sooner or later. We all one day must let go the hold, and if we do not do this of our own free will, the toy will be torn away from us. And this will mean great sorrow and in many cases a broken heart. For most people, this is the only way in which they can be made to learn their lessons. But it is very painful and usually takes many lives. We should try to live a spiritual life knowingly, consciously, deliberately, in a spirit of dedication and singleness of purpose. This will of ours may be directed towards the higher channels of life and towards the lower ones, just as we please. If we are able to rouse tremendous enthusiasm in ourselves for the goal to be attained, then only shall we get the necessary energy to strive for it and do our utmost. In the world of spirit, you very often find people with a chaotic brain. They do not care to follow any definite system and like to drift on the boundless sea of their emotions and impulses. So they attain practically nothing. In fact, just as little as the out and out worldly people do, no person with a muddled brain can have any success in the world, and much less so in spiritual world. Settle once and for all what you really want. Very often we want to attain peace but follow the path that can only end in restlessness and trouble. There's a saying in Bengal. There are some people who, when they want to go towards the east, start walking towards the west, and if you ask them why they do so, they reply, because I want to go towards the north. Next, the test of truth. The lover, when dreaming of his beloved, imagines things that have not really happened. The madman too imagines things that do not exist at all. All hallucinations are to be avoided in spiritual life. We must try to get a glimpse of truth by following a systematic course of spiritual practice. If such a glimpse comes unawares and if we are not properly prepared for it through long and regular training, the reaction may be tremendous and may even unsettle us for life. We must first learn how to become fit for such glimpses so that we can make them our own for good. Spiritual evolution at first brings great suffering to the aspirant, not happiness. In the intermediate stages, his life becomes very difficult. Then he has no longer any interest in what he has in the world and cannot yet obtain self-realization, which is still beyond his reach. It is just like hanging in midair without being able to go either up or down. The test of truth is this. Whereas in the case of worldly things and worldly relations, you can never get any ultimate satisfaction. In the case of spirituality and spiritual life, you can get that perfect satisfaction which is not dependent upon anything external. So, the great sage Narada says, realizing that divine love, a man attains perfection, immortality and ultimate fulfillment. The really thirsty man always needs water. but those who are not thirsty can do without it for a long time. The really sincere aspirant will do all he is told, but people with so half-hearted and so little sincerity in them push themselves in such a way that they are not in any great hurry to follow the advice they are given. And then we want the purest water, not adulterated water, or water that has become terribly dirty. We should rather feel thirsty, but should not go in for anything that is not good and pure. Truth cannot be realized without struggle. All life is no doubt a struggle. Everybody is struggling to achieve something or the other. But spiritual struggle is a struggle of the highest order. It is a struggle for conscious. It is a struggle that is conscious. Struggle, struggle, struggle. There is no other way. Let us not be afraid of struggles. Next, the power of reality. It is very often very difficult to have yearning for God in the beginning. And the reason is that God does not seem a reality to us. With most of us, this body is our soul, and it is for the enjoyment of this body on the material plane. It need not necessarily be a very gross form of enjoyment that we are most anxious. Religion to most of us is something highly amateurish and a kind of fashion, just like so many other fashions. But if someday through our spiritual striving God comes to be a reality, we feel that our whole being responds to that reality and longs for it alone. If the world is real to us, it absorbs our entire attention. If something else is real, that too does the same. That which we take to be real for the time being affects us, stirs up our feelings, draws out our will. It occupies our whole intellect. In fact, our whole being responds to this reality. If we carefully study our own lives and the lives of saints, we find a great difference. It is the reality that affects the mind of both, but the reality is something different to the saint from what it is to us ordinary people. To us, this world is real. To them, the spiritual world alone is real. Their whole life is filled with this one idea: how to realize the divine, how to make him a reality instead of an intellectual vague concept. If we were able to appreciate what the saints call reality, we can also appreciate why they are ever ready to lay down their lives for the sake of God realization. We should not, however, blindly imitate the saints. They may appear rather unconventional or strange in their behavior. But as we have said, all their thirst for God is based on a clear conception of reality. Those of us for whom the sense-bound world alone is real should be careful in our spiritual struggles. For us, success largely depends on the regularity and intensity of our daily spiritual practice. Very often we are so careless in this. Without steady practice, nothing can be attained in spiritual life. Spiritual life must be a life dedicated to the highest, a life of consecration and sacrifice and one-pointedness. So we should be more wide and awake, more careful about our own thoughts for our own benefit and for the benefit of others to whom our thoughts of lust, greed or violence are worse than poison gas. Indeed, the havoc we create by our impure thoughts is far worse than that created by poison gas. By our impure thoughts, we affect people who do not even know impurity. But by our pure thoughts, we help others in their struggle after purity.